does look like a Chane is still left in the hunt, trying to make his way, cutting in. And amongst a field of 3 Starvos,
There's
he's
a
trying it.
fascinating little thing here is that the Chane, which is on the top end of the bracket, managed to sneak its way to the bottom part of the bracket. I'm assuming that these are correct because it looks like Li Hong
Yes.
Ye should be facing off against Luo Shengzun, but
Maybe not. I'm not actually sure.
nonetheless, there will be a Starvo in the finals. Now the question is, will Chane get there as well? As looks like both players here are squaring up. Mr. Armada, I'm excited. The first game was exceptional.
It was fantastic. If you missed the first game, the quarterfinals match that we watched was down to the wire. It was as close as it probably could possibly get. And I hope that we are in for as much of a treat as we got with that first game in this semifinals matchup. This is in the top 4. It's playing for one of those top spots. And, you know, if you're not quite sure what they're actually playing for as they start their turn and draw up their cards, don't forget that the champion here is getting, I believe it's $7,000 USD and a gold cold foil extended art tunic. The runner-up is getting 3,000, and then the third or fourth place players are both getting 1,000 plus a random drop and a PTI.
Not bad. All right, so this is a little bit of that strategic pitching, as it were, getting rid of some of those cards. Pitch the red first, go follow through with the ice card afterwards. That is just a way to sort of filter your hand a little bit further, as it were. But, you know, swinging through with 4, typically it depends on what you've got going on, but it's often a situation where you don't typically want to give your opponent an opportunity to filter their own hand. But if your hand stinks as well, there's nothing wrong with it either, right?
You're not wrong. He's throwing a Mauve Skies and a Riftbind. Of course, you want that Riftbind there at the end of the game, but it's not as impactful as obviously as we used to see Riftbind be when you had Seeds of Agony and rotation. You can still get some crazy Riftbind turns off the backs of things like Minnowisms and the 2 costs that you can banish and then play, which I'm blanking on. Howl from Beyond. There it was.
There it is.
Popped up there in the old noggin at 2:40 a.m. Howl from Beyond. Those are still some amazing plays off of a Riftbind from Banish, but not as crazy as you used to be able to get. Back in the day.
Back in the day to me feels like 9 p.m. of Saturday night, but that was like ages ago. Ultimately, friends, we're so glad that you're up with us here. As Armada and I were very excited about this, even though the prospect of staying up all night to cast Fab may seem daunting for some. It is for the love of the game, baby. Damn right.
Yes, this is awesome. And looking at the composition of both these players' hands, this is going to be an interesting turn sequence. I can't quite make it out as far as what the Chane player has. We know the Invert Existence is there. I was really curious to see what those other 2 cards were. It looked like Reduced to Rune Chance, but that would be really interesting.
There's I believe that's a Minnowism that's in there.
Yeah, we see the Minnowism that he could possibly follow up and play, but perhaps it's not.
Well, we know it's not Seeds of Agony, but
yeah, it's not the Seeds. He's gonna make a Soul Shackle here, bring that aura in.
I want to ask.
Oh no, this looks like a Howl from Beyond, followed by perhaps a Ghostly Visit.
I wanted to ask you. We've seen various approaches to playing against Chane as Starvo. We've seen aggression, try to outrace them, find those big fuses, those Okanodes, those crippling crushes, those spinal crushes, really put the pain on Chane in order to, really limit what they can possibly do, get them to 0 as soon as possible. And then we've seen Michael Hamilton beat an exceptional Chane player by the name of Cody Williams at the Calling in Indianapolis by taking 2 times an approach of fatigue against it. And even when Cody knew that fatigue was the plan and he was able to go for it, or to prepare and play as with that in mind, Michael Hamilton was able to fatigue it out. I'm curious if that's the case here. Finding a fused Okanold obviously is not necessarily an indication that that you are or are not, because if you find a fused Okanold, you're going for it.
This nice little power play following up the attack there from Chane. There's a couple of questionable things we can talk about at another date as far as how that last turn played out, but As far as slamming down a, a what is that? An unmovable blocking everything on the
Plus the grasp,
yeah,
plus
plus the
the
grass
movable.
blocking everything
That's the 9.
makes that a nice little dodge there, right?
Well, the on hit effect again. That's the beauty of Okinold. It's Okinold is one of the most powerful cards in the game when it gets everything going. Coming in as a 9 dominate with an on hit disruption effect. I mean, and it only costs 3. It's so versatile. It's so good. Being able to stuff that card. Typically when you're playing in Starvo, you're saying, okay, that's one Okinold down. There's 2 more around the corner, maybe some crippling crushes. People are usually keeping track of this stuff. But at the moment, this is the situation, and that's one of those major threats that were basically mitigated.
Yeah. Coming across with a very weak turn overall in sort of response, coming across with a shackle into a Rosetta Thorn just for 2 straight up, holding a single card, no resources floating. Obviously, you pitched the Command and Conquer, so not floating anything there. This is an easy take here from the Starvo player. And then asking if there's anything else. In this case, there's not, because he wants to stuff that arsenal so that he can perhaps use it next turn. If it's a defense reaction, then you're feeling pretty comfortable. Again, as Chane, overall, your game plan is to survive until these shackles start to really rack up and then be able to put on counter pressure. Shows the fuse on the beautiful double-sided Starvo, as we can see there. And comes across, asking for a card first with Winter's Bite.
Nothing wrong about that. Again, it's you already have a card in arsenal. There's another pitch for typically the Earth card. You pitch blue for the Earth card. Usually it's the Lightning, and then you pitch another Ice to swing Hammer. If you already have a card in arsenal, then that's not a big deal. So you can go ahead and lead in with the Winter's Bite and tax your opponent. So that Winter's Bite is forcing the opponent to make a decision. Do I pay 1 or do I discard? Obviously, it's usually just a pitch, which is going to be helpful, frankly, because you're loading up now for late game for those Soul Shackles.
Yes, it's beneficial here. And assuming that this is it's the red Autumn's Touch, this does come for 9 with Go Again, which is pretty big for a middling sort of attack to slam down and just push for 9 damage, dominate, Go Again, and then allow you to follow this up with a hammer for 4 after it.
What's so great about these Starvo lists when it comes to the ice cards that you're putting in there, oftentimes, especially the lightning cards, usually it's just filler, whatever makes sense to fit in there as blue lightning cards. But Winter's Bite as a blue ice card, usually it's pitched for hammer, when necessary, but it does sometimes find that clutch time to come in and really disrupt your opponent. And in this case, that's exactly what's going on here. 9, Go Again, a hammer on top, real nasty.
Yeah, here's a fun card in this list. Someone in chat pointed this out, and it's actually a card that I very much like. Blue Reek of Corruption, a card that came out in Everfest, and if you've created an aura, which is very easy to do in Chane by just making a Soul Shackle, then if the attack hits, Reek of Corruption, if it hits, then it forces a card out of your opponent's hand to discard. And kind of just like a weird little value card at blue. It acts as pitch. It blocks for 3, but you could also play it down in a pinch on weird corner cases, which is kind of fun. And allowing him here just to block a little bit of damage. But it is a pretty cool tech piece, and one that I've messed around with in Chane actually myself in Blitz.
So as it stands now, life total being what it is, there's a 5-point lead here for Ling Hongye, but keep in mind that Chane only gets nasty late game. There are 2. Ooh. Those are 2 rips off the top that make sense here, but I don't think there's no pitch. So there's going to be 2 points of blood debt tax that he's going to have to pay the dues for. And but again, those are cards that are going to stay in the banish zone for a future turn. So taking 2 blood debt now is not so bad. You can always play that again, of course. It's just
there is an argument to be made of keeping those in the banish so that you can stack up for a future turn, which is not a bad play overall, because you can kind of snowball a couple of large attacks by just paying a few points of your life total. Here instead, just trying to get some of that out so that you can keep your banish zone clean and avoid excess damage, perhaps, is the play here. It also depends on what's in the arsenal, because if it's a 0 cost, attack or I don't know, anything that can really push some damage or allow you to capitalize, then maybe you want to play it. But really, I think this is maybe just him choosing to clear out some of the banish zone to avoid blood debt. I think there is definitely a line here where I would consider just leaving those in, but maybe that is greedy against a Starvo player that could possibly just jam out, I don't know, a dominated crippling crush and destroy the hand, something like that.
So that's a full block here. The Ram's Head plus the Crown of Seeds. He did pick up a Crippling Crush off the cycle with the Crown of Seeds. Now, does he still maintain a fuse with the Starvo? That would be brilliant here if he could pick that up. We'll see if he does have all the elements. It looks like he does. There's the big Starvo full art coming through. Winter's Bite, Evergreen, and some claws. That's good to summon Captain Planet. Why not, my
and
friend?
the shake of the head from the Chane player saying, this is not what you want to see. And of course, it is a dominated crippling crush for the casual 13 with Go Again floating a card in hand. And this might be the reason why you would want to clear out some of your blood debt banish zone stuff, because if this goes through, you may not have much to work with and you'll be just taking more points and banishing more stuff. It does have an Art of War in hand, and that's exactly the kind of card that you'd want to keep and set up for your own large turn. But if you just say, okay, cool, I'll take all this Crippling Crush damage and then discard 2 cards, maybe you end up hitting, unfortunately, that Art of War, so it makes it a calculated risk.
That flash that he pitched in order to get the cycle off of the Crown of Seeds was like the greatest pitch ever. Frankly, is that it basically allowed you to go ahead and mitigate the damage from using Crown of Seeds, Ram's Head, and pick up a Crippling Crush that you can fuse and come in for 13 dominate. Go Again. The Go Again I don't think is going to factor in here, as I'm pretty sure there's just the 1 card left. It's just going to be you're going to pocket that card, drop to 4, and laugh all the way to the bank here. This is a nasty bill that Li Hongye is going to have to pay here. Crush effect.
Really, this is going to force cards out of his hand. He's going to throw the husk in front of this. This is a huskable target, as one might say, because the composition of this hand. From what we can tell, we can see like a Revel in Runeblood. We can see an Art of War. Those are powerful cards that you would want to set up on your own turn and do something with. Use that time to rip cards from hand, plus whatever you end up banishing. And if you didn't have to stare down a dominated crippling crush that really cripples your hand, then you might just get away with it. And this is exactly why we see him throwing the husk plus all the equipment that he can to keep some semblance of a hand and maybe play Art of War, maybe snake it into some of these attacks you may end up banishing depending on how your banishes go.
Let's be real here. That was precisely the right amount he needed to just get there, so to avoid the crush effect. Here comes the rips off the top. You
hate to see your specialization get banished, but you're okay with the bounding Demagon. I think it's a red bounding. Depending on what you have in hand and what you can kind of like banish, draw 2 with, you're probably okay, depending on your resources. And of course, there's a lot of variables that we can't quite make out based on hand composition. But anytime you look at a hand as Chane with an Art of War in it, you're like, all right, we can work with this.
That husk is so vital in terms of what Chane can do. Again, the carrion husk blocking for 6, but eventually becomes useless at a certain life total. But just tossing it out this early can potentially come back to bite Li Hongye. We've seen what this can, what carrying blood debt over and over. If you get caught with a turn where you're just holding on to this pocket full of blood debt, that's essentially going to singe you through your genes. It's just nasty in that regard. But for Chane, typically, Armada, usually you're at that 5 or 6 shackle range, and that's where the math gets nasty. That's where there's a lot of creative accounting that you need to do to make sure that you're able to go through here. But we've seen that Starvo has just not relented in terms of pressure on the Chane player. So, obviously there's no more fatigue. It's not a matter of fatigue. I think it's just a matter of just trying to go pedal to the metal here and try to make it awkward. I mean, being able to draw into an Oakenol, draw into a Crippling Crush, forcing your opponent to give you cards at that shackle turn. It's pretty nasty, but this is going to be a turn that is finally going to start to clap back.
Yeah, this is the turn that you want to set up if you're the Chane player to try and take cards from hand to stop the constant barrage and pressure of the Starvo triggers that you might have to stare down. And looking at the Starvo player's hand, we did see a Pulse of Candlehold, which does make triggering Starvo so much more comfortable and easy. So it would be fantastic to be able to push a bunch of damage in a bunch of different ways. And it looks like that's what he's trying to do here. Playing a Ghostly Visit from hand first. This does have Go Again off the back of the Soul Shackle Maid here before actually playing it this time. And then we have a variety of follow-ups that you could have with like Unhallowed Rites that you chose to banish off of Art of War, which pushes a nice breakpoint. You could just play out the Bounding Demagon. There's a variety of things that you can do. And if he's holding, I can't remember what his pocket card is, but yeah, exactly. If you're holding like a non-attack, Spellbound Creepers here could be something that you activate, on one of those turns where or on one of those moments where you're trying to get Go Again. Now here he does actually have Go Again already, so I'm not sure he needs to play down the non-attack, but he could have a specific card in hand that generates some Rune Chance. Like that Revel that he blocked with last turn. Maybe he had a double Revel hand or something like that.
Chane has always been a hero that has had so many fascinating interactions, so many intricate, game texts and such. And Spellbound Creepers is one of those cards that can really do some nasty stuff. But it's like
it will stack up his action point. That's what I think he's explaining. Is he'll gain an action point if he plays a Go Again. My apologies, but he's going to play from Arsenal a Shadow Puppetry, which will gain him an action point basically off the resolution of that Go Again text, plus the resolution of the Ghostly Visit Go Again text.
So there you go. It's exactly. This is precisely it. This is where you need to have like a degree in flesh and blood law, as it were. You need to be, an attorney when it comes to this kind of stuff, because you have to not only understand the text, but then at the same time convince your opponent that you're correct, which you are.
Right.
But ultimately, it's just a matter of it's not a matter of trust me. You have to have the capacity to explain to your opponent what's going on. I have been caught in these situations early on, but these are pros. I mean, this is the semi-final, the Calling in Taiwan. So it's just always good to be clear about these things. But look what this Chane player can do. The Chane player has just strung together this incredible turn, but there's still a pile in the blood debt. So there's going to be some potential taxation with no float there, but two action points remaining. Starvo here is under pressure.
He's threatening a lot here, too, because if this does hit because of Shadow Puppetry, he could continue this line and banish something else. But at the very least, he looks at the top of his deck to see what he's going to draw and if he wants to banish it or not. It looks like he is going to look at it. He's going to leave it on top because it's a Mauvrian Skies. That's something you don't want in the banish zone, of course. But then you can follow this up, since you do have an action point remaining. You could follow this up with like the Unhallowed Rites, the Rift Bind, depending on what he's got here. He's pitching. Coming in with the Rift Bind to push extra damage. He's pushed a ton of damage on the back of a single Art of War. That's exactly what you want to do. And you can see the Starvo player stubbornly refusing to give him any cards. As you mentioned earlier, top level players say, just don't block.
Just don't block. It's that simple, right? Typically, the decision tree I used to go through was, okay, on hit effect, no. Lethal, no. Block, no. So you just go through that and you're fine. But in this case, the problem being that, usually if you're absorbing this amount of damage, it's because you've got a hand that could potentially push your opponent into an uncomfortable decision because their life total is immensely threatened. Their prospects of winning the game. Well, that's look at this. Quite the brave move, frankly, given the fact that the Chane players are still at 29 health still. So even with an incredibly huge turn as Starvo, you need to string together multiple fuses of disruption style cards like Spinal Crushes or Oaken Olds or Crippling Crushes, anything that's going to stunt your opponent's ability to have those big turns. But ultimately, even as Chane right now can eat an Oaken Old or eat a Crippling Crush, hold two cards that are blue in hand, and still pop off for immense amounts of damage.
Yeah, because this is the benefit of playing as Chane, and perhaps why we see Chane consistently making its way into these top eights at like higher level tournaments, because they're playing with two hands. They're playing with a hand that they're holding, and then the hand off the top of the deck when they banish things. And again, we still see it: a pitch, a crown of seeds, a draw into 4 cards. We're wanting to keep our options open for a Starvo trigger. Looking at the hand, though, it's not looking like you have one of those big, like, overwhelming attacks. Maybe you just, at this point, you've been so holding on to the possibility of getting that, big counter swing. At this point, maybe you look at this and you go, just protect my life total in some way, shape, or form, and just be okay with losing some cards. Doesn't look like he's going to do that. He looks like he's just going to full grip onto his turn and try to swing back some tempo. But this is a lot of stuff going on.
This is an incredibly important moment, because this is where you need to be able to know what Chane can do. This is where knowing your opponent's deck is important as well, because
that's the big moment too. You have to wonder, as a Chane player, are they just sitting on Awakening for that big pivot turn? Because that's like the only thing that really, really hits you hard, is if they have Awakening into a Fuse, into, I don't know, Pulverize, Crippling Crush for the hand, Oaken Old, that sort of stuff.
He's eyeing the crippling right now. That's what's sort of in the there it is. Okay, so that's what's coming through. There's going to be enough seismic surges to basically make sure that you and your next 3 generations are getting a free ride. But ultimately, this is what I'm talking about, is that if you, as a Starvo player, if you don't know what the full capacity is, what that full ride is like, with the cards that are peeled off the top, if you are not aware of just what the ceiling is, you might think that, okay, my hand is good. I'm going to eat 12 or 15 damage, but I'll be able to swing back for 12 or 15, and I'll feel good. But if that 12 or 15 that you're anticipating becomes 18 to 22 or something like that, because you were just not aware of what the capabilities of Chane was like for stringing together go-agains, etc. If you are not adept at that Chane game, then you're going to get caught flat-footed, because then that comfortability of taking 12 damage to deal 15, suddenly you're taking 20 to deal 15, and you basically committed to it altogether. You said, well, I've gone this far, I'm all in. You're pot committed, right? So
good Lord, look at this. He's got 19. He has so many, he could eat them and like sustain himself on the amount of seismic surges he has at the table right now.
It's like 2.5 crippling crushes.
That's an immense amount of seismic surges. It will definitely wake you up. He's going to take a 2 points of blood debt here at the end, because Husk always deals the blood debt. And then, of course, the Unhallowed Rites still in there. And, if you're the Chane player, you're like, I'm not a fan of the way that this play is going to kind of come out. But, at this point, I may as well just take the damage off that back of that Fuse, and lose the cards from hand, and then play whatever I have off the banish. Again, it's the benefit of playing as Chane. You have a second hand.
So he picked up the crippling and opting to, dominate the...
No, he grabbed the Oaken Old. He was deciding between several, but he ended up choosing the Oaken Old. After all, put that into his hand, and then off the back of his 28,000 seismic surges, he could play anything.
I mean, give or take a couple here or there. Yeah, with the exchange rate, we don't know. From in Taiwan, in North America, those seismic surges might have a different exchange rate, but ultimately, it gets the job done. And life total is a little bit more, hefty here, but I don't know if that's enough at this point, as for the amount of damage that was taken for that Awakening.
Not a good banish. Those are not good banishes. Hitting those really cool looking talismans. Not cold foil, though, so we do have to knock him a point on that. No, we don't have to knock him a point on that. Those are fantastic looking, though, when they aren't cold foil. Hits only the Shadow Averser, unfortunately, which is kind of a bummer, because you legit just took that damage so that you could perhaps play out a semi-big turn off the back of the 2 cards in your hand, which are resource cards, and whatever you banish. But now you're looking at, well, just basically the card that you had in banished before, because the Shadow Verser doesn't really do much for you, acting as 2 with Go again.
Well, let's be real here, Armada. It's a matter of, when your opponent is at 10 health, as the Starvo player is right now, you as Chane, you're just saying, all right, I just got to make sure that I find I rip off the top and find that kind of gas that I need, because 10 is easily busted through when necessary. It might come down to that last turn if necessary. How many times have you seen Chane games where they've basically peeled off the top of their deck? They are running dry, they're running on fumes, but that major turn is like, it's like the last 2-3 minutes of a basketball game. It lasts 20 minutes because, frankly, it might be the end of the game, but the amount of creative accounting that needs to be done, the amount of just mapping out these turns is it's such an intricate surgical process.
Yeah. For those that are asking, by the way, in chat, why Talisman of Tithes came off the top there, Talisman of Tithes is a card that you can play out that has go again, and it just sits there. And it says that if your opponent would draw like one or more cards during your action phase, instead you destroy it, and they don't draw any cards, basically, because it's played against Crown of Seeds, wherein like your opponent tries to use Crown of Seeds on their turn, or on your turn, I should say, and you just pop the Talisman of Tithes, and instead they just don't Crown of Seeds. So it stops Crown of Seeds in its tracks, but unfortunately it's going to do nothing because it's in the banished zone.
Both of them are. I don't know how many copies in total were floating around in there, but 2 of them got peeled off the top and just put through the paper shredder. They're banished. They're gone, and they ain't coming back.
Gonna take the blood debt damage, I would imagine here. No, he's choosing. Yes, he is choosing to take the blood debt damage off the Unhallowed Rites as well. He did Soul Shackle for the Shadow Averser, but not going to follow it up because you don't have the pitch, I believe. Or maybe he did have the pitch. I'm not sure why he didn't follow that up. Nevertheless, drawing up his hand, passing on over to the Starvo player.
Yeah, in chat here saying spicy tech or bad card, you be the judge. Frankly, honestly, that's a fine line that you dance between a spicy tech card or just a bad decision, and ultimately, we'll never get to know because they have been evaporated. They're gone.
That's right.
Presto changeo, hocus pocus, they're gone. As this is just a blue evergreen, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Not exactly the most devastating of moves here, but I believe he's got
a pulse in hand, and he also has what he's probably going to arsenal, which is the lightning surge. If he chooses to arsenal something, pop that lightning surge down in there, and then most likely Crown of Seeds it away. Could also play lightning surge just for like the 2 go again, which is kind of spicy in that respect.
This might be a window here for Li Hongyan to just say, all right, give me 5, no problem, because I would love to have 4 cards in hand and rip 5 cards off the top. It's potentially, he might just be tossing cards away that he knows he can't play, cards that don't have go again action cards, knowing that he might pick up a ton of them off of the top of I think Vexing Malice.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what he's doing. It's tempting to just try and say, I'm going to keep a full grip, but there's actually no point to doing that, because what you're doing at this point of the game when you have 5 shackles is playing out just about everything that you hit and banished. And so your cards in your hand become less useful because you need to clear blood debt so that you don't die. And in this case, he could have probably chosen to keep stuff because he whiffed pretty hard, only hitting another Shadow Averser. But he did keep a 3-card hand, so maybe he can still string together a decent. But you could see the visible look of frustration, tilting his head back and saying, where are all of my banishes? Because they're definitely not in the banish zone.
Well, think about it this way. I mean, every turn that he's able to survive, he knows that his odds are going better. He's basically filtering out all of the garbage, as it were, the stuff that he's not going to be able to. Now, it's awful to see it in this regard, because if all 5 of those were great peels off the top, it would have been a whole different ball game, right? Unfortunately, now it's just a matter of like, okay, it's coming, but will I be alive when it gets here? And in this case, he has to push something together here to at least maybe take some cards out of Starvo's hand, maybe even just tickle the thought of lethal to a degree.
Yeah, no, definitely. And looking at Starvo's hand, he has 2 pulses and a blink. And we know the arsenal, I believe, is that lightning surge I mentioned earlier, which is just a blue 2 attack. So unless that last attack, or unless that last card in hand is an attack, this is actually kind of a horrible hand. It looks like it's, oh my god, it's a Heaven's Claws. So actually, there's even though he whiffs on the banishes, there's a window for Chane here to still capitalize and put out some amount of damage and say to the Bravo star of the show player, well, if you have a good hand, you're going to have to consider getting rid of it. And in this case, he doesn't really have a good hand.
There's an opportunity here to pitch one of those lightning cards that you're not going to use. It'll allow you to crown. It'll allow you to
Exactly.
activate your Rampart of the Ram's Head.
Mhm.
If by some means there's some arcane damage coming through, you'll have one floating for your boots. So that's a possibility over here. You'll get some value off of one blue pitch, and perhaps you find the extra piece that's necessary. What if you pick up like an Okanold? I don't know if you have the right pieces in hand already. I don't know what you're missing. I didn't see what pulse was in there.
I think he has 2 pulses. He has both pulses in hand. He's got a blink. He's got something else. He's going to choose to put a Howl from Beyond to the bottom as well. But literally, his hand is just down to Crown of Seedsing and like hitting a big attack, which is pretty rough. But here, threatening 4 damage with Go Again coming across, and then keeping what looks like 2 cards in hand as well, floating 2 resources. This is where you want to be able to push something.
So this is where we can kind of go back to that, the beginning of the game where we're talking about the strategy that Bravo can take. Because we've seen aggression versus Chane, and we've seen patience and fatigue versus Chane. And frankly, in all the high-level matches I've seen, patience and fatigue has been the more reliable and successful strategy and approach to Chane. As we see here now, when they're trading blows, Chane eventually just continues to pick up momentum and momentum and momentum in regards to, that power level, whereas Starvo might be able to pick up some late game pushes, etc. But ultimately, Chane just gets stronger and stronger as he goes. It's just that snowball going down the hill, right? It eventually just becomes this massive boulder that you cannot stop. And
Yep, that's the beauty of Chane, right?
Absolutely. And in this case, I mean, I think, and you need to commit to that strategy. Pivoting midway through will do justice. It'll do you no favors. You need to, if you're committing to fatigue, you need to commit to fatigue from turn 1 through till the end of the game. Letting any damage through can be problematic. And as we see here, this is where it becomes dangerous, because now everything that these turns are only going to get nastier and nastier, and you will not have any leeway. You won't have enough runway, as it were, in order to absorb damage so you can start swinging back. So those big Starvo turns that you were hoping for late game are no longer a possibility because your life total is so low.
Yeah, he's coming across with Rosetta here. After pushing this Rosetta damage and just taking, there was this line mentioned while you were speaking. There's a line mentioned in chat, which I thought was fantastic. With wherein, and we might see him actually play this out, which I didn't notice at the time. I guess chalk it up to it being pretty late right now or early in the morning. He's going to fuse here, but you can candle hold at instant speed and then grab something to the top of the deck, and then Crown of Seeds, the arsenal away to draw said thing that you get off of the top of the deck. Basically acting as like a pseudo rattle bones effect off the top of the deck with Crown of Seeds, which is kind of fun. And that is a fantastic line. Looking at the discard pile, though, you have to grab an elemental, or I think it's an earth or an elemental. Is it earth, lightning, or elemental that Crown of Seeds fetches? So at this point, I think you're only fetching like that blue, the blue Autumn's Touch. I can't quite make out what his graveyard was, though. We may see him play that out exactly. Nevertheless, it is going to be dominate +2 go again. Shout out to the several people that mentioned that in chat. That is a fantastic line.
Yeah, that was a line that Michael Hamilton took, I think, to go ahead and pick up some more of those major pieces, right? That basically kind of sealed the deal for some of those late game plays. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's basically a matter of saying, all right, I'm going to go put something real fat and sassy on top of my deck and then just go get it. And not only am I going to go get it, I'm going to let my Tunic pay for it too. So we're not really losing anything out here. So there it is, saying, okay.
Oh, that's right. He had the Okanold. I forgot the Okanold was in the discard pile.
So there's the Okanold on top of the deck, and then you're going to go ahead and use your Tunic and your Crown to go pick up that Okanold. There it goes. Tunic value. See you later. Mm-hmm. Let's do a little do-si-do with our arsenal on the top of our deck. And oh, hello. What's this?
What could that card be? And then you can play this off the back as well. That's very interesting, being able to just slam down the Pulse of Bolthaven and jam out a jam out a nice big chunky Oakenold. Oh no, and the Chane player just drew into an Art of War hand, which basically would have been the game.
Oh boy. So 13 dominate on hit. Yeah, see you later. Adios, goodbye. The Starvo player going down to 4. No skull cap. My goodness, the husk is gone. The
Yes,
skull
the
cap
husk.
is offline, and the gloves are used up.
Yeah, there is no equipment block available at this point for the Chane player, and this is that moment of defeat when you see that giant attack on the board. And I think it is a 15 dominate because it gets the pulse effect as well, like the plus whatever, plus 4.
Well, so it was it's technically 9 off the Starvo because it was not fused by itself. So it's 9 off
okay.
the Starvo plus
Gotcha.
the 4 from the Volthaven. So that's 13.
Wait, did he revealed? No, I think he revealed the Pulse of Candlehold and the Pulse of Volthaven.
Right, but he wasn't able to further fuse the Oakenold, right? So
that's correct. I see what. Yes,
Yeah.
you were 100% correct. Yes.
So you're getting smoked here because
I mean this is a bad moment.
well, you're giving up some cards and you already have 2 floating. I think he's taking what, 10 damage here. So did he block for 3 or for 2? I wasn't aware, but ultimately you were going to see in a second here going down to 2, and now here come the blood debts that you were really worried about earlier on. But that's a big whiff in itself too.
Unfortunate miss, yeah.
But is this enough to get through this? This could be game changing on both sides. But
he keeps the Art of War, and because it wasn't fused, he's not going to have to force that discard, which is a huge change. And that is, I guess, one of the things we're lacking, not being closer to the action, being able to kind of pick apart which fuses and knots. Nevertheless, the fact that you have Art of War in hand, 2 cards to use for resources, and the what is that? I think a blue plus a yellow plus a red Bounding Demagon all stacked up there, and an arsenal. This could be good for the Chane player, unless that happens to be some. Oh, he's going to come in with a Mauvrion Skies as well. Happens to be like a Blizzard in hand. Nope, looks like a Channel Lake Frigid. Oh, there is a Blizzard as well.
That is going to be massive. That is a really great card to pick up in this pivotal turn because it's basically make or break time here for the Chane player. Going down to 2, holding on to the hands again, given the fact that the Oakenold itself was not fused. It was fused by Starvo, so there was no on-hit effect. So there's no hand disruption at all. It was just pure damage, but look where you're at. And there's the Blizzard saying, all right.
He's going to happily pay for it, and he has 1 card left in hand. He may be considering just like pressuring him with middling damage here, taking cards from his hand, and then arsenaling the Art of War, which allows you some flexibility, because if your opponent just comes back at you with something decent, you could, in a pinch, play it defensively, but you're also setting up for perhaps a blowout turn after banishing even more cards off the top. Now, it really does come down, as the Chane player, to you counting how many banishes you have in your deck and knowing at any given moment. And yeah, exactly what the Starvo player is looking at, knowing how many invert existences are in the deck still, because you do have to play around invert existences.
So you have to clear up everything, because if you leave any cards in the banish zone, you're going to die to that 1 card you've left there plus the Carrion Husk, right? So you need to make sure that you are cleaning out, you're cleaning house. Spring cleaning's in effect right here. So block what you can. I think that what you're doing here as the Starvo player is just trying to go and just stuff this as hard as you can.
He's going to Art of War in response, I think, to give a buff over the top, perhaps. He could also be choosing to give go again so that he can do exactly what you're saying and clear. No, it is perhaps giving that buff. But Art of Warring here allows you the opportunity to play that sort of mind game trick, that combat trick as well. And going to clear the Bounding Demagon. I think he did choose go again here, not indicating that he's playing out the Chane Soul Shackle.
So now it's a matter of also just evaluating where these cards are going to be best used. If you're the Starvo player, you can't the card that you're pitching, you're not really pitching it for any reason. Like if you want to activate the Ram's Head, let's say, because I don't know how much breaking of the chain there will be for the Chane player here, wherein you'll get extra value off of the Ram's Head. So I think the cards in hand right now, which is what, a Channel Lake Frigid, which blocks for 3. I'm trying to think of what else is in there.
Yeah.
But there's
Well, I think you do have the ability here to throw the Rampart out there because he's going to shackle so that he can go again Rosetta, right? So you can assume that he's going to you could block conceivably with the Rampart on the next bounding and then follow up with a Rampart block perhaps on the Rosetta if they break the chain the second time. But even like blocking here and then, bringing it back and then blocking the next bounding gets you a total of blocking for 3. So it is worth considering, right?
This is such a beautiful, beautiful game right here. This is what I love about Flesh and Blood. And, all the decisions that led up to this moment over here, as you could see all the players clean that up. No problem. We're still going.
Breaking the chain.
Yeah, breaking the chain. We still got to go strong here. You got to clean up that one extra card if necessary.
And look at this. 1 card left in hand. Only the ability to stop 1 arcane damage. So he just makes a rune chant, pushes Rosetta for 1, 2, and 2.
Oh,
and that
my
seals
goodness.
the game. And Chane sneaks out into the finals, out of the semifinals and into the finals.
Incredible game. Absolutely incredible. I'm always astounded at how these Chane players can make it happen, especially since so many of the tools have been clipped out of Chane's arsenal, as it were, and still managing to find a way through. That was really well done. And usually when it comes down to these Chane games, Armada, it's always that last turn. It always seems like it's do or die on that last turn. Either I win or I lose. There's no in between. You love to see it. What a match.
We are in for a real treat to see if Starvo can pull out the win here at Calling Taiwan and earn some of those Living Legend points, getting closer and closer, or if Chane picks it up and just shows everybody how this thing goes. And as you can see, it's Chane versus Starvo time.
It's definitely Chane versus Starvo time, and it's great to see Chane in the finals again. I know that a lot of people might just be exhausted from 2021, as it were, seeing Chane all over the place. But here we are, in the knee deep in 2022. Chane making another resurgence. It seems like there's every time you can count him out, he shows up again and again. Having him win this tournament is quite it would be quite the story, frankly, ultimately, as I don't believe Starvo won the Battle Hardened in Taiwan. Starvo did not win the Battle Hardened in Madrid, so there's all kinds of opportunities for Starvo to continue its the dominance, but ultimately has been falling short a lot lately. So this Chane game is going to be great to watch. The difference here, I believe, Armada, is I'm wondering if Luo Shengzhen was perhaps keeping an eye on the previous game and maybe just getting some information and saying, okay, you lost to that Chane player. How did you approach it? Were you aggressive? Were you fatiguing? Like, what is your strategy? And this might factor into how this game is played, because if it comes down to just a quote-unquote slobber knocker, then the Chane player, in my opinion, has the advantage. So we'll see how this one shapes out, but I'm quite intrigued to see the strategy employed against Chane here.
Yeah, and this is the Starvo player that we did not see in quarterfinals. So he picked up the win against the Starvo player we did see, Yin Wei, in the quarterfinals. He picked it up against him in the semifinals, which of course propelled him here to the finals, where they are playing for keeps and for that beautiful, absolutely fantastic Fyendal Spring Tunic. One of only a few left in the world to be won. I don't think this is the last one on the table, but I could be wrong. This may be the last Fyendal Spring Tunic that is up for grabs before that card rides off into the sunset as far as prizing is concerned. Which is a huge, huge deal.
Yeah, I was gonna say, imagine how much one of those is gonna go for, on the open market. Those things are so limited, but so coveted. It's not just a matter of, hey, it's a pretty card. It's just the story that's behind it, right? So that's always fascinating. Yep.
So here we are, Chane versus Starvo. Not sure who won the die roll and elected to go first. We'll see as they play out this opening turn. And we'll see if we can make out so many early game cards that they might be holding in hand.
It comes down to seeding, if I'm not mistaken, right? Like whoever's the
high. Is that correct? Yeah, I think you might be correct.
The higher seed will always, or the better seed rather, will always get to choose first or second,
That's
and
right.
typically they first seems to be the way to go these days. So I'm suspecting that I believe the Starvo player.
Oh, it looks like Chane's acting first. Very interesting. In doing so, he's making a soul shackle, and then what is he going to follow this up with? He could just consider, like making a rune chant and passing, so not to give the Starvo player the opportunity to sort of cycle and set up for a trigger on their turn one.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Very interesting.
strategically pitching here, you pitch like a red, and then it's something like maybe two reds to create a rune chant, as it were, and then you
Right.
go from there. That's usually a good way to do it. Plus, you're stacking some powerful cards for late game, but ultimately you have to have those cards in hand first to make that work. So there's there you go. So, oh,
Just
okay.
gonna come across with just for just a casual 2, which does give him the opportunity to filter and block with cards. He's gonna block with an Autumn's Touch here, not taking any damage, but he will follow this up, pitching away, making that rune chant, and then just passing it on over. I would imagine arsenaling the last card in hand. This succeeded in getting a single block and allowing a single cycle card for the opponent, but it also allows him to set up a rune chant plus a soul shackle. No Starvo trigger at the beginning, instead just pitching away, and then coming across with just the casual Oakenol double fused anyway. He just
Oh
comes across
man,
with it anyway.
finding
Oh,
that.
and look, he's got the double Talisman of Tithes hand. So 2 non-block cards. Looking at this, this is a rough hand to have into that.
Well, there's a belittle and there's a captain's call. So your belittle's not even finding a card, I think, to even match with, right? So you're tossing cards away here, it feels like.
I don't know if you ever consider equipment blocking this. You may just take the damage and toss the hand. Yeah, he's going to throw 1 card in front of it. Be content to keep a single card. Most likely, those are all just for pitch, and you're just going to do something simple on your turn. Those 2 cards will go to the bottom. Last card in the hand. That'll discard. And then on your turn, you do get a Soul Shackle banished, so you could do something along the lines of that. And you do hit a blue. I think it's a blue bounding there.
That is a blue bounding, and just curious to see what he managed to hang on to. There's the talisman.
Grab the
Hey,
talisman. He's going to slam the talisman down, I guess. It does have natural go again, and he is going to come in with the 1 rune chant plus the bounding Demagon there. So it does allow him to sort of establish that Talisman of Tithes, preventing a Crown of Seeds. In response, look at this. He's going to choose to Talisman of Tithes, pop, and then force the Crown of Seeds not to draw him a card, which is pretty fun. That rune chant, will he actually pitch to stop it? Probably not. He's going to take the rest of it. So he takes the 1 plus the bounding damage as well.
the thing about the talisman is it exists on the board for the majority of the game anyways, or until it's used ultimately. So I mean, just get it off the board as soon as you can at this juncture in the game where you're at 40 life. I mean, now's the time to do it. You don't want this to sort of stuff you late game where you might be able to close out. So that's one of them gone. The other one went to the bottom of the deck. So that's going to be some late game banishment, I believe, anyways. And here comes hammer time. So we're going to pitch an icy encounter, come in with a hammer for 4. You got a little frostbite tax on that bad boy if it gets through. So evaluating the hand here, you're only on shackle 2. So I think that you could still give up some cards if necessary, if you want to, because you're not going to have that explosive turn unless the hand he's holding onto right now is in itself very, very strong.
Yeah. Plus, it also matters what we're looking at as far as arsenal is concerned. If you can just pay your way through the frostbite, you may consider taking some damage. Nevertheless, if you throw some cards at this and hit a decent shackle or 2, you can still play a very nice turn. Really, you're looking for those moments where you can draw into and then follow up and play an Art of War. And you like to hit that in that mid-game time frame. He's going to just choose to full block this, blocking for 5 on the 4 there so he doesn't get the frostbite, leaving himself with a 2-card hand plus an arsenal and banishing 2. Banish 2 off the top, doesn't hit on either of them. The danger of running things like Captain's Call and Reek of Corruption is that, and several other cards in this deck, and you kind of have to run these nowadays because you don't have the ease of playing out like Seeds of Agonies and things like that, is that sometimes you're just gonna banish those over and over and over again.
Right. I mean, you don't have the exactly. Seeds of Agony is 9 cards out of your deck that were hits, right? They're basically free plays that you could go ahead and shackle through and feel good about banishing and being able to play for free. And no more Plunder Run either, which is a big card that Chane liked to play as well. But you're going to have to fill those spaces with something, and if there's nothing possible, you got to. It's a matter of best fit, right? And in certain cases, Captain's Call is that best fit, but by means of giving something Go Again if necessary, or giving it +2, and doing what you got to do. But here comes that's
with the fuse,
yeah. Here it comes. So this is the clapback.
Plays down Flash, or is he just showing him Flash to see what he's got there? I would imagine.
Reading it, get Go Again on a card that's attack for 2 or greater. That's the blue Flash. And that was pitched, so it's not attacked. But
that's right.
So there was a fusion here. So that is I believe that's a 9 Go Again, and it is dominated, but it's just vanilla damage. So there's going to be no on-hit effects here. But 9 is 9, baby, and if you can only block with one thing, well, I don't think that Carrion Husk is on the menu just yet. You're probably saving that.
Say not.
That's hunting for an Oakenold is my thought for sure. But ultimately, that getting that card out, eventually, the more damage Chane eats, if he finds bad banishes, and eventually those Oakenolds late game are going to be incredibly devastating.
Yeah, this is one of those moments where you can actually just, because it is vanilla damage, you can actually be okay taking this. It's the ones that discard cards or mess with your hand. Those are the power cards, of course. And as Chane, you have some dance around as far as just like playing things from banished instead. But here you're just maybe full content to just take most of this, and then of course consider what you want to do as far as a Frostbite is concerned. And he's just going to equipment block here so that he can keep a full hand and try to push damage. I want to go back a turn or so with the red Reek Corruption. I do. This is why I like Reek Corruption in general, because Reek Corruption in that moment was pushing a breakpoint. I believe that is the red in the discard pile. Was pushing a breakpoint that is awkward to block, and because he had Soul Shackled on that turn, it was threatening a discard, so it forced cards out of the Starvo's hand. Unfortunately for the Chane player, it ended up not being able to stop the fuse, but he took the damage and dropped to 24 life in response.
As it stands over here, the Chane player has been taking a beating down to 24 health. Luo Shengsun at 36 on Starvo. Equipment use, one swing with the Creator Fist has been blocked already. You still have a full Stalagmite, and I feel like that is going to be imperative. We've seen the previous Starvo player play with the Rampart of the Ram's Head against Chane. So Stalagmite's a different flavor here. You're not getting the sort of the everlasting ability of being able to block over and over, but I don't think you need to, because just giving a Frostbite to a Chane player at an opportune time can really pump the brakes on their entire game plan here. So that is a key difference between the previous match that we watched that was won by Chane to this one now, because that's a very, very important piece of equipment that late game can really change the tides.
Yeah, looking at this hand, there's an interesting setup here where you would love to just jam out a bunch of attacks, but without something buffing them up like an Art of War, or without like the extra ability to, just in general push Go Again attacks across the board. It doesn't look like he has a non-attack in hand, so he can't like creepers things unless I'm missing one of those cards as a non-attack. Perhaps I think it's a Shadow Puppetry in Arsenal would allow him to snake together a few of these Go Agains and a few of these attacks more than what might be expected. It's just figuring out that line of when to play it and how to play it out to get maximum number of cards out of your opponent's hand. It's a tough line to walk, and looking at the Starvo player's hand, looks like he's got 2 Winter's Grasps and I think 2 of the same Earth card as well, which is kind of a funky draw, but it also means that you don't have a fuse trigger on that time. So how do you play this out from the defending side of things will be very interesting. He does have a Invert Existence in hand. Going to Shackle and then push Ghostly Visit for 4, and then cause the Crown of Seeds reaction, or instant speed Crown of Seeds with the Tunic resource.
Crown of Seeds, such an incredible card, so much power in that one piece. You know, when that card was printed, reading it, you're thinking like, okay, what is the real ceiling of what this card can do? You knew it was good. It was a legendary piece of equipment, etc. But in reality, the sheer amount of value that card can really give to a deck that like Starvo that wants to find very specific pieces to get things going. Such
he is going to
clutch
Creepers
piece.
of Howl from Beyond here, which does allow him that second action point to push extra damage and also push some of these attacks either out of his hand or out of that banished zone. As we were talking about, well, let's see. Yes, that's going to push 3 plus whatever's in his arsenal or whatever's in his hand, or that, I think it's a blue bounding. I can't quite make out the color there.
That is banished on the side. I believe that's red. Again, sorry for
Is it red?
I could be wrong here. Again, it's almost 5 a.m, but it's been a long day. The colors and shapes and everything are all just blending together. But what we do see here, at the very least, is a fairly significant move of a pretty powerful push. That's 7 coming through. Again, the calculations are there, and we're just taking a look at what's going on. The cards are being placed on the table. There's a little bit of a I believe that something's I don't know if there was a judge that came through. We're not sure exactly what's going on, as both players are just kind of waiting for the resolution of something to happen here. As we see, that's exactly what's going on. Not sure what the deal is. As somebody in my chat mentioned that they did pick up a clip here, that there was a potential an issue with perhaps when some of the cards were placed to the bottom due to Okinold.
Right.
So that is what's being brought up here. Potentially, we're not entirely sure what the situation is, but somebody in my chat, Elmactronic. I'm sorry if I'm saying that.
Yeah, there's been a conversation continually going, I think, since that moment where there were 2 cards forced to the bottom, where it's wondering what happened with that interaction and if cards got tucked to the bottom correctly. Nevertheless, whether or not that plays out that way, we'll have to wait and see what judge ruling happens, or if this is related to that in any way, shape, or form. Because again, we don't actually have any information being where we are located. We're just sitting and watching alongside of all of us as well, hopefully providing you enough insight and entertainment to, I guess, keep your morning going. Is it morning wherever most people are?
The only way that we are.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I was looking earlier.
So the game's back. We're back at it, but I guess but this is the lives are back at 40.
Oh, did we run it?
Oh, they're just replaying what's happening. Okay, so here's the situation.
Yes, this is the moment, okay? And it's interesting from all perspectives, because he tucks and then he looks at the 2 cards and he slides them to the left, and the third card stays on the mat there.
Okay.
And this is the play that's under suspicion, and when you watch it, I don't know. It is definitely hard to look at that and come away thinking everything's on the up and up, just because as far as, and this is just in general, I don't think when you're playing out your turns, best practices indicate that if someone is selecting for you, it's a good idea to not mix your hand of cards with the hand that is being like separated, with the cards being separated.
Yes.
Just to keep everything on the up and up. And no matter whether or not anything is intentional or unintentional, to avoid all problems like this, you want to keep your hand and any selected cards separate. Because if you say, well, this swap or what looks like a swap was completely unintentional, it's very hard to say that retroactively if something happened, right?
Yeah, they're currently interviewing the winner, which was the Starvo player in that particular game. So there you have it.
It does look like they called it then.
Yeah, that's precisely what happened. And and this is what's being said in my chat as well, that even if it is a mistake, you shouldn't be that sloppy. And in reality, like you mentioned, Armada, frankly, the best thing to do in these situations, just to avoid any doubt or any kind of mix-up, even if it was or was not intentional, the way that I do it, and I'm not saying this is the way everyone should do it, I put, if there's a mechanic or something where people need to peel cards out of my hand randomly or based on their selection, I put the cards down right next to each other on the board, and I say, you touch, or you do what you got to do, and then I will put the cards in my hand, and then I will put that way there's no issue whatsoever. But ultimately, I believe, listen, we don't know for sure 100% because we were not there, but from what Steven and I can surmise is that was the transgression, which the penalty I guess was a disqualification, ultimately leading to a game win for the Starvo players. So
That's correct.
Again, as much as we would all have loved to see a finals, there is a winner, and there's no diminishing the achievement of this player right here. And we'll put him on screen here so you guys can see. But there's no diminishing what this player achieved, getting through the calling, getting to the finals, and winning the calling in Taiwan. So major congratulations are due, and nothing taken away from this win.
No, it's unfortunate that the entire match wasn't able to play out to its fruition. But as you said, he had to work his way all the way through 2 days of grueling Swiss rounds and then play in every single match up to this point. So all kudos go out to the winner. And it's one that it's a tough way to kind of go out, especially if like from a professional standpoint or a competitive standpoint. There's a lot of players that want to win at the top levels their way, but don't let that dissuade public opinion, because the grind to get here is something that not everyone can do. I mean, obviously, because not everyone did it. So kudos to the winner of the Calling Taiwan.